afternoon, everyone. I'm Vidhi Sharma and your MC for today. We are pleased to welcome you all to the 17th ReBitVlogs Majlis. Before we go ahead, here's a look at our agenda for the year. First, we'll be having the welcome note, after which we will introduce the panelists. The teams will then put forward their views, after which the experts will share their insights. The teams will then put forward their questions, to which the experts will respond. Then we will have the audience question and answer session, after which we will have the closing. Kindly do note that the entire session is being photographed and video recorded for educational and promotional purposes. Now, to tell us a bit about ReBitVlogs, I would like to invite Dr. Zeenat Khan, Associate Professor here at UOWD and founding creative mind behind the Majlis, to tell us a bit about it.
Hi, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be doing the 17th iteration of this Majlis panel discussion. We introduced this in 2017 as a way to get students involved with industry, with our other faculty from different faculty schools, and with each other to think about ethical dilemmas that corporate world faces. Instead of talking about theory in class, we found this to be really, really effective. And because it was so effective, we actually also managed to get grants from the Australian government twice to do student exchange as well. So we are hoping, again, we will get the grant in the future, and then we will be able to take students to Australia or bring students from Australia here. It's one of those platforms that really works well when you're thinking of work-integrated learning, when you're thinking of inquiry-based learning, because students need to start thinking beyond their books and their classrooms. So we are really excited, and we thank, of course, all the speakers for being here and for being a part of this Majlis, and of course to Vidhi.
The theme for this Majlis is transparency versus confidentiality, dilemma of project managers. In the current dynamic environment of IT and engineering, project managers are entangled in a critical balance between transparency and confidentiality. They must tread the delicate lines of ensuring team members and stakeholders are sufficiently informed to foster trust and facilitate collaboration, while simultaneously safeguarding sensitive data and intellectual property rights. This balancing act demands meticulous judgment regarding the extent of information shared. Over-disclosure can precipitate security vulnerabilities, whereas insufficient sharing can breed distrust and impede the momentum of projects. Furthermore, navigating the complexities of compliance with legal and contractual obligations, alongside promoting an open and inclusive atmosphere within projects, presents a formidable challenge. Project managers are thus compelled to navigate these intricate dynamics daily, making tough decisions to maintain the project's integrity and propel it towards success. So how do project managers strike the optimal balance between transparency and confidentiality? What strategies can be employed to navigate the complexities of legal and contractual obligations while maintaining an open project environment? Are these challenges merely operational, or do they delve into the realm of ethical considerations in IT and business management? This invited panel sifts through the ethical dilemmas confronting project managers, the implications of teams, stakeholders, and the broader industry, and explores pathways forward in addressing these critical issues. We are honored and excited to welcome our panelists today. Our panelists for today are Dr. Kamal Jafar, the Associate Professor at the Faculty of Engineering and Information Sciences, University of Wollongong in Dubai. He teaches the program for the Master of Information Technology Management, Master of Engineering Management, and the Master of Engineering Asset Management. Dr. Jafar is a corporate consultant and a trainer in project management. He is also the author of a book titled The Digital Project Management Evolution. With 17 years of experience in the IT industry across the Middle East and Australia, Dr. Haitham brings a rich blend of theoretical and practical knowledge to his teaching, enriching his students' learning with real-world IT examples. His educational philosophy focuses on enhancing understanding of material, boosting learning outcomes, and supporting students in their academic and research endeavors. Dr. Hitham's research interests span cloud computing, software as a service, database security, big data, e-commerce, and machine learning, contributing significantly to these fields. Before his tenure at the University of Wollongong in Dubai, he served in various academic and IT industry roles, showcasing his versatility and commitment in both teaching and technological innovation. In order to select our student panelists, we had an initiative on campus. The storytelling and poster competition at UOWD took place this semester. The student speakers are Sadaf, Saleh, and Louis. 3 winning teams were chosen based on judges' scores. Each team selected a speaker who are joining our industry speakers. Finally, the panel is moderated by Dr. Zeenat Reza Khan, and the Twitter and question and answers will be handled by myself. Now, with a minute to organize the panel stage, we will move to the next segment of today's Majlis, the panel discussion. May I please request everyone to switch off your phones and do not walk around or move in and out of the auditorium as we are filming the session. Do not forget to use our Twitter handle to ask questions.
All right.
Okay,
Testing.
Is it working?
all good?
All right,
Yeah.
it's working.
All right. Thank you again, speakers, for being here, particularly to the guest speaker, Professor Kamal, and of course, Dr. Haitham, and the students. So as you know, the topic we are discussing is transparency and confidentiality, and the pull or the dilemma that project managers may be facing when they're actually talking about each of these issues in their daily lives. You've gone through as a class, we've done a storytelling competition where we've looked at this topic already. We've looked at some case studies on how this dilemma is faced by project managers and how they deal with it. What we are trying to do today in the panel is basically talk about all the different stakeholders, not just the project manager. We know the dilemma belongs to the project manager, but the dilemma doesn't just come because of he or she is a project manager. It comes because of the company, because of the clients, the stakeholders, the government, so on and so forth. So what we are going to try to do today is we're going to first start with our student speakers. We're going to invite each of them to tell us a little bit about this dilemma from the perspective of the different stakeholders. Once the students are done, we will move on to our guest speaker and then to Dr. Haitham and myself. Just to let the audience know, of course, you have to use the Twitter X handles @ReBitVlogs and #ReBitVlogs when you are asking questions. Ms. Vidhi is on the Twitter poll, so she's keeping a track of the hashtags that are coming through, and she will choose the questions to ask the panel at the end of the session. So I will start off with Ahmed first. So Ahmed, tell us a little bit about what your research has found, the kind of dilemma that project managers face.
All right, so first of all, let's just thank you for this amazing introduction you have done, as well as let's just thank the whole students for being here. I know it's Ramadan, we're all thirsty, we're all hungry, we're all dizzy as well. So thank you guys for being here. Let's just get straight into it. Let's just imagine you guys are at a conflict juncture between 2 paths. First path is that you're doing the right thing, but it takes time to achieve. Second path is that you're chasing success, but it questions your ethics. And let me give you an example of what I mean. Have you guys ever heard of a company called Theranos? Have you? Okay, good. So this Theranos company has attained the whole world's attention with their so-called claim that they're going to revolutionize the health scenery and just basically just get better tests, get better results, get better treatments, decide if there's a disease that's upcoming before symptoms show up, and they're just like a hospital technically. But away from the eye, what was going on is that their technology wasn't working at all. Their technology was just falling behind, never gave accurate results. So now they fall under the condition of the conflict of juncture between 2 paths. First path is that they should confront and tell the truth about it. Second path is that they lie, they deceive everyone, and they just keep going with their lies to just make money off people. So which path have they gone with? Of course, the second path. And now they have valued money of the company and profits for the company over honesty. over honest work, over honest reports, over honest results. So what happened? Now we've got people at risk. We've got patients, we've got stakeholders, we've got investors. They're all at risk.
Yeah.
This company grew so much to the point they've reached millions,
Right.
millions by millions. And they've reached millions by millions. And then people started to notice that they're getting fake results, they're getting wrong results. So what happened? Legal battle started with them. And so people wanted to sue them, companies fighting with this company because they invested with it. And then from a court to a court, from a court to a court, the same way they rose in this short amount of time, they also died with it. And then as well as, so never, ever sacrifice your integrity for the sake of ambition, never. For the altar of ambition, never do that. As well as the lesson over here is just, success doesn't only come with this. Success doesn't only come with money. Success doesn't only come with the profit of the company. Success also comes with maintaining the trust of others, your own trust, your trust with other people, your own integrity, as well as they haven't done that. So what happened with them? They completely died, shut down. And yeah, that's what happened with them. So this is the difference between ethics and business.
Right. So I think what the takeaway that we can take from that case study that you've just shared is that the project managers do face this kind of dilemma between transparency and confidentiality. But the case that we are seeing is they in the name of confidentiality, what they were actually doing was breaking ethical rules and guidelines. And if you think about it from the long-term perspective, in fact, this wasn't even long-term, it was a very short-term. The turnaround was so quick. They rose really fast. They became $1 million company, but then they fell just as fast because everybody picked up on how they were misusing data in the background and how they were not being transparent about the work they were doing. Okay. As a project manager, do you think that person, whoever made that decision, could have gone the right way? And what would have been the repercussion if they had maintained integrity in this case?
Look, as project manager, we should always just chart or create a clear ethics or transparency or just honesty work with everyone around.
Right.
Especially that people are just looking for money nowadays. No trust, no nothing. All they care about is just straightforward money. And this is the problem that's going on now. And yeah?
Yeah, good. And because we've talked about company, I think I will move now to the next student speaker, Louis. Louis, from your research, what have you found in terms of where companies stand and their stakeholders, clients stand when it comes to this dilemma between transparency and confidentiality?
Thank you for inviting me to start speaking. So our research, we actually found 2 case studies that basically detail that depending on the stakeholders of the project and sort of the nature of the project, it really depends what degree of confidentiality or transparency
You should maintain.
Yeah. So one example was this project by Accenture in the pharmaceutical industry. They were porting patient info and clinical trial data to the cloud. And of course, something as sensitive as patient data has to be very confidential. They would sign NDAs with the clients, and the members on the project teams would go through data privacy training. So it depends on the type of data and the type of stakeholder. And this also had maintained client trust. But on the flip side, because I told you it depends, right? There was this project under the Climate Corporation that was optimizing where farmers place their fields and their crops. So they would use weather data and land data. And that stuff is very public, and the stakes are not very high.
Right.
So another thing about that project was it required constant collaboration with these farmers. So it was very important for them to foster trust, and it would also help them solve problems faster to exercise more transparency.
Okay, so what I'm getting from you is, yes, we need to maintain confidentiality, but there is a need for transparency in certain cases, but it depends on the degree of maintaining confidentiality versus transparency, and that has to do with the data itself. So when you're thinking of IT project management or large mega projects like Dr. Hazem had mentioned in his guest talk, what kind of data do you think we're typically IT managers are handling?
Are we discussing like, are we basing off of the Theranos situation or just?
Yes, you can talk off of that.
I guess in that example, they neglected publishing all their scientific findings. And one thing that I remember about that situation was they just did not disclose what their technology did. And investors just kept pushing money. And then once they found out all the test results came faulty, some of them were false, they drew all their money back and
Yes.
the company ended up collapsing.
Right.
So when it comes to IT projects specifically, when it's sort of the field of
Healthcare.
new discoveries, healthcare, anything that has to do, anything that's high stakes, you need to exercise transparency.
Good. That's a good point. Thank you so much. So with that, we move to Afra. Afra, from your research, what have you found in terms of governance and legislatures? Where do governments stand in all this discussion about transparency versus confidentiality for project managers?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. In terms of the legal repercussions, governments have they have very it's hard for them to like establish a perfect balance. Sometimes it feels like they're on a tightrope, and like finding a perfect balance can be pretty difficult. But in some situations, it's important that like both data transparency and confidentiality are monitored in some aspects. Like an example would be of the MIT source ventilator project that they had for COVID-19. That was like it was like an open source like project on which like multiple like engineers could like collaborate worldwide, and for that like they had to like disclose some of their data, but that was for a good cause, since like it was during the pandemic. Another important point would be that there's a website called WikiLeaks. Yeah, even though it is controversial, it's like it serves like a good example of like how powerful data transparency is in uncovering risks. So like it's exposing like potential breaches of like public trust, and like that public like it's exposing like the potential breaches of public trust and human rights violations. So even though it is like pretty unorthodox, it highlights the importance of like being very transparent with data.
Okay. So as an IT project management student, do you think governments should be more involved in terms of these decisions between transparency and confidentiality?
I think I would have to partially agree with that. Like in the case of Theranos, it was important that like since like the company wasn't being like very honest with what they were doing, it affected like a lot of people negatively, since like it was being essentially marketed as like a like a groundbreaking like
Innovation.
a very revolutionary innovation. So because of that, a lot of people did end up like suffering, like were affected negatively, and for that the government needed to like intervene and like essentially like figure out that like what they were doing was technically illegal.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for the distinctive understanding of the different stakeholders. With that, I'm going to move to our guest speaker. Professor Kamal, you have extensive experience working in the industry and equal amount of experience teaching project management, ethical dilemmas, not just for engineering, but for IT management as well, mega projects and so on. Given the discussion that you've heard from the students today, what's your take on this whole question between transparency and confidentiality?
Well, I've been attracted by a couple of keywords. Usually we look for keywords, You talked about data breach, data is usually the digital identity for any company. Government usually governance or government give you your ID, and you are responsible for your ID. So again, mixing between government role and the role in shaping your ID, well, this is a big debate. They've given you your ID, and it's up to you how you protect it and how you shape it and how you reflect it to both your colleagues, and here we're talking about stakeholders, or to yourself as well. So it's the job actually of the organization itself to create a lot of processes for data protection. And then there's different roles. The role of as well of the stakeholder as well to know whom he's dealing with. Okay. And the only way I know whom we are dealing with is not by the smile and smart look we're looking at. We have to know our rights as a stakeholder. Let me imagine I'm a stakeholder. That's why if I don't know my right, I put a legal consultant next to me to tell me what's my legal right. So in many, I'm talking here about big project now. We don't have anymore the process of normally you initiate a project, you tell the client or you tell the project manager or the organization what you need, and then there you go, you have a project. No. Usually now clients are getting a legal consultant in which they go over all terms and conditions of the contract or of the requirement or the scope itself. So that will save them a lot of later on money, a lot of arbitration, a lot of legal issues. So again, business in general is not ethical in general. So it's our role to protect ourselves, both from a stakeholder perspective and as well from an organization perspective.
I think it's so interesting what you said about the legal aspect of it, and this is not something we immediately think about when we are either teaching IT project management or we are thinking from the perspective of the IT project manager. But I think that's a very crucial point that you made, that if I'm going into a contract with a client about confidentiality or transparency, I need a legal person to tell me what are my rights, what are their rights, what are the boundaries that we need to have so that we are not breaching or overstepping what we think we can and cannot keep to ourselves or release. So at this stage, maybe what I would like to ask you is how much of governance or legislation checkpoints are needed or are there currently to make sure that this kind of breaches are not happening?
That do very a lot. Definitely from a macro level, you need to have some level of processes to check.
Right.
And those are the high-level governance strategy in which you operate at.
Right.
And at different level, you as well need to. My problem coming from the. So, to cut the story short, throughout the process in managing a project or managing an organization which has a strategy, operation, procedure, and project management processes, you need to ensure across it. You have a circle, a closed circle, to loop up and tell you where do you have a breach or where do you have a weakness in order to improve.
Right. So how does a project manager make that decision that in this particular project, this kind of data that I'm handling, I need to ensure certain level of confidentiality versus releasing the data to the clients or to the public?
Okay. There's a big debate in the project management body of knowledge. That big debate, and even that debate was at Boeing level, Boeing CEO level, in which are we responsible for the process, or do we make our talent, whom we've acquired, to be responsible for the process? Because generally, you don't need to put a lot of constraint to how we think as a project manager or how we approach a solution. Once you start confining us with processes, methods, templates, name it, okay, platforms, then all of a sudden I'm following you in the solution rather than following what is
I'm
my
bringing.
experience, what I'm
Yes.
bringing. And there's a big debate when you fail as a project manager, whether you had a data breach or you have a client or a stakeholder who's not happy, whose fault it is. Is it my fault as a project manager in which I've done a mistake, or is it the fault of the organization itself who didn't empower me with enough processes that secure me, help me, and guide me? That debate, I wouldn't tell you now what is the right answer. That debate will keep on
Happening.
for long term. It varies from one company to another. Boeing started with flexible processes. You are the project manager, you know your assets, you know what you need to do, you are responsible for your project, you are the king of your project. What happened across the line, they discovered they have multi-billion-dollar failure projects. And again, they went into that dilemma until they created what you call it, Boeing best practices in project management and running a project. So again, it wouldn't be a simple answer.
Okay, at this stage, Dr. Haitham, I'll come to you because you've got such an extensive experience again with the industry, and now you've moved to the academia. To what extent do you think companies are responsible and or should be responsible for the kind of decisions that project managers make in debating this transparency versus confidentiality?
All right. First of all, I just want to talk about the project manager in general. The role of the project manager is very critical, and the skills that the project manager should have is should have wide variety of skills in order to deal with multiple stakeholders, internal, external, team members, executive managers. So now once we talk about the company and how the company can affect the project manager in order to have a balance between the transparency of what they have and what they work with and the confidentiality. So here like usually the organization, they have some policies that they follow, the standards, like policy, internal policy for the company, maybe some standards they follow from like framework, like PMBOK or any other frameworks. So they enforce these policies, and we have usually auditing team. It depends on the organization, like size, like small or startup organization. Maybe they won't have that level of maturity of like auditing and how we can be comply with these policies as project managers in the organization. But speaking of large organization, usually they have standards where they follow these policies, like, as I said, internal policies, and we have auditors who they will come like maybe twice a year, every 6 months, and they audit the way how, for example, the project manager, they share information with the team members. So they should be, the project managers, responsible of what they own, regardless of any type of project management they handle, whether it is construction, IT project management, or any other type of project management. So here, they will follow these standards, and for example, the auditors, they will check like how they convey the messages and the policies and how they share it with the team members and the other executive managers who they are dealing with them, maybe sometime with the external like suppliers or other things, to have this transparency of the policies that they have. So they go and they check for them. And we already gave the students like how they can audit the projects, and they are aware of what we are talking about now, how to audit the project, and which is part of this, like how to follow these policies and attain and comply with these standards that we have.
Right. I think it's very crucial that we come back kind of and link back to what Professor Kamal said about how much to really police a project manager at the end of the day, right? As Professor said, you know, we don't want to put too much constraint on the project manager, then they're doing what we want rather than being innovative, bringing in something new to the project for which we've hired him or her. So what is your take from your experiences on the kind of balance that companies manage with project managers when it comes to these kind of decisions?
Like decision of what, sorry?
So how much should they be policing a project manager? Should they be micromanaging a project manager's every decision?
Right.
Or trust that he or she will make the right decisions?
Right. So now it depends. It varies, honestly. Like we have like, speaking of organizations, big, large organizations, they have the project management office.
Right.
So which manage different types of programs, and which these programs, they have many projects underneath these programs. Right. Now here it depends. Like if we have like this PMO, maybe they will help the project manager in order to take some pressure from him and convey this like task in order to delegate these responsibility to the rest of the team.
Right.
Okay, so project manager can have some like assistance sometime in order to help them to do that. So it depends. Like some project managers, they have to have micro management because they have like small team. They don't have BMO who they can manage also and help the project manager to do that. So it depends. It varies from one project to another. In my case, I worked in different types of organizations: small, medium, large, startup, consulting firms. So everywhere is different. Everywhere is different.
That's really interesting. So at this point, I'm going to throw this back at the students, and any of you can pick up on this. Given what you've heard right now from government's perspective, the company and the project manager perspective, how difficult do you think it would be for a project manager to make these decisions? Anybody? Louis, maybe, or Ahmed?
Okay, I'll say it.
Yeah.
Could I just ask him a question before I answer?
Yeah.
Regarding your experience with multiple different companies, which option was the best option? Which option gave the best outcome for the team regarding the project manager? Using Malcolm.
Okay, in terms of the outcome of like having successful project,
Yes.
I mean, right? Again, it depends. Like we have some small companies where one employee can do different roles, which in the large organization, you have like separations of roles. Like you are programmer, you do programming. You are doing testing, you do testing. Quality assurance, business analyst, business analyst. In small organization, when I was working with the small organization, I was doing multiple tasks by myself. Also the task of the project manager. So but you cannot say that if it is a small or medium or large, then the project should be successful. Once we follow the good standards, once we follow the PM book, like knowledge of areas and good practices that we are teaching you in the classes, so the project manager, once they have the balance between the three main constraints, which is the scope, time, and cost, then they will have good quality of project, and then they will have successful project. Even if it is like small or medium or large organization, it depends. How good is the project manager? The project manager who can handle and control the project from all the knowledge areas of the project, including how to have the balance between the transparency and the confidentiality of the data or the documents or the lessons learned from the previous project, all of these aspects. It depends.
Yeah, Ghassan? The question.
Can you repeat it?
So given what you've heard now from the panelists, the experts, do you think it is a very difficult decision for project managers to make when it comes to these crucial points between transparency and confidentiality?
I mean, yes, since the whole weight is going to be on them, no one is helping them out unless, as Professor Haytham said, they have an assistant. Regarding the options or the choices they make, it's all on them, so no one's going to judge them. Professor said that who is at fault? Is it the organization or the project manager? And what's the answer? We cannot know. It's either this or this. As well as the project manager just can't decide everything by himself. I honestly, at my own opinion, I honestly think that they need an assistant, they need a team, not just himself that chooses everything alone. And yeah, that's it.
Did you have anything to add? No? Yes? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I actually do have a bit of research that my teammate Umer prepared for me. And it's specifically regarding data breaches. So there was this 2023 cybersecurity assessment conducted by Bitdefender. And the respondents came from all sorts of sizes of companies. But of course, since it was cybersecurity, they were in the IT sector. And one question that they asked was, were you ever told to keep a data breach confidential and not report it? You can stop me right here if this is too much red tape, okay?
No, it's fine.
Okay, but the survey yielded that 42% were told by higher-ups to keep a data breach confidential, and 30% more have actually done so. So I guess to link back to your question about how much responsibility falls on the project manager, I think that some can actually be offloaded off of the project manager, because anyway, during the project, the manager needs to get approval from C-level officers, from other stakeholders. It's always like a company-wide thing, a project, right? And I guess I want to argue that this result of the survey is also company-wide. It's not just the project manager's fault.
Excellent. Okay, Afra, did you have anything to add?
But wait, can you repeat like the last point that you just said?
Sure. Given that employees on all levels were told to keep data breaches confidential, something like this can't be the sole responsibility of the project manager.
Yeah, that is true, because the project manager isn't like the project manager would just have to like overlook all of the other employees that are working, but like if one of the employees like breaches the data and like the project manager does not like have an idea of what happened, then like it shouldn't like fall on
them.
Yeah, on them.
Okay. We are almost out of time, but I want to come back to Professor Kamal. We've been talking about who's responsible, but I would like to shift the gear a little and talk about why these decisions happen, right? Why do project managers make the decision to maybe hide something that's going wrong, some kind of data that they say it's confidential, but they might be hiding it? Or on the other extreme, why would they release data? What's the driver? Is it just the money, as Ahmed had mentioned?
Dean, at a certain point, decision has to be made. And someone has to be responsible and accountable. Regarding what to be released, what not to be released, sometimes it comes to the decision maker.
Right.
And to the policy that guide that decision maker on it. But we as a project manager, sometimes we are in a situation where it's vague. It's not clear. Even the policy is not clear about it. And myself, I'm not clear about it. So at the end, it's a 50-50 decision you have to make, and that comes with experience.
Right.
That's why when we hire a project manager, he needs to have that experience, because he will be in a position where he needs to do that decision. Okay. In general, you talked a little bit about transparency as well. Okay. So that's why we see now a lot of companies are moving toward digital project management, digitization of project management, where all the data or all the information that might the project manager know is digitized, and other people and other entity within the organization is aware about it. And by doing that, they're sharing now the risk as much as possible between decision makers. Because sometimes it's always the case that when something goes wrong, someone will say, I was not aware about it.
Right.
Or I didn't get the right data about it, or the wrong information about it.
Yes.
So it do happen. So with moving toward digital processes in project management, that helped a little bit in creating a more transparent guide or project management practices in general. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, with this, at this stage, we would like to open up the floor for questions from the audience. You've heard our students speaking, you've heard our two experts speaking. The topic still remains to be transparency versus confidentiality for project managers. We are up for questions. Vidhi, you're the moderator for this part.
So we do have questions that the audience have asked us on Twitter. and I've selected the best ones. So we have a question from Ahmed Abu Bakar, who wants to know if you can provide an example of a situation where transparency greatly benefited a project.
Maybe over to the industry experts for this one.
Yeah, sometimes this transparency will benefit the project. For example, if we have what we were talking about, policies, if you make the policies transparent with the team members, it will benefit everyone, for example. We shouldn't hide these policies from or share it to be like fair. Speaking of fairness between the team, we shouldn't share it with some like levels of employees and not share it with the other levels. So we should have like this transparency with everyone because it will affect the project at the end. So
Very good
one
question.
example of it.
As well, I was working with a project called for emerging technology. Emerging technology is one of the big companies in Abu Dhabi. So that company was failing a little bit toward delivering to the client, the stakeholder on time, on scope. Because why? Sometimes you at an IT company, you start going to a segment of a product development, which you are not a core competent in it. So at that time, we were part of a team in which the company is going to, we recommended a lot of restructuring in the process of how you get business, how you develop product, and how you go back to the client. So our advice at that time as part of the team was to be very transparent with an employee about the restructuring process. Because at the end, we want a winning case. And we are depending a lot on developers. And those developers are the ones who are generating the core value of the business. So we want them to be on board. So from the beginning, we were very transparent in sending the message. The reason, the rationale, the objective, what's the advantage for them, what's the advantage for us. And we've highlighted a little bit the disadvantage in it. And to be frank, it was a successful case. Transparency do help, and not all the time. Sometimes you not being transparent, you might be saving your employee, or you might be helping the project more than not helping it.
I just want to add
internal, I'm saying internally.
I just want to add more thing about what you just said, Dr. Kamal. Now, transparency is very important because if you want to do the planning for the project, to have the plan and the estimation of the project time, we should get the estimation from the subject matter expert. We cannot hide all of this information from them. We should be very transparent with them to a level that we can have with them.
Yes.
It's very important.
That's a very good question, and I think very good answers as well.
I have a question related to ethics. Let's just assume you have your own company related to consultancy, taxes, or just selling products. Let's just assume your company is at a survival risk, all right? So would you slide away from your ethics side to improve the survival rate or survival risk for the company, or would you just take the ethics side? Where would you just find the balance?
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. We learned in life in engineering that there's always a distribution. And that distribution had an upper limit and lower limit. Ethics in practice, it had a margin of upper and lower limit. As long as I will be within that upper and lower limit, I will go ahead and do it. It's clear? And that upper and lower limit is it's a bit questionable because it can
Honestly, from my opinion,
might become unethical.
Honestly, from my opinion, as long as there's no harm being done to the people, that's fine with me.
Okay.
As long as there's no harm done to anyone.
Really? Next
Okay, I
question.
think we have time for maybe one more
One
question.
more. Yeah.
What steps can be taken to address the ethical dilemmas pertaining to transparency and confidentiality in global virtual teams, considering factors such as data privacy regulations and cross-border communication?
Who's the question from?
Me.
A very good question. Okay, so we are thinking in terms of virtual teams and cross-border laws and legislations. Professor Kamal?
Giving me the hard time. And again, globalization in general in running projects has been there for a long time. Managing virtual teams, again, has been there for a long time. Yet, there's no confirmative practices on how we run them. Still, that knowledge is still like evolving. Even after the pandemic, still there's a lot of debate about what's ethical, what's not ethical, HR issues. There's many things that are still under research. But again, we always need to start from a benchmark. Using a benchmark,
Right.
even though it might not be fair for everybody, but it's fair for the project
Majority,
itself.
yes. And I think what's really important in this case also is we can't just say, I live in UAE, I'm working in UAE, so I'm only going to be aware of the laws and regulations, practices, benchmarks in UAE. I think we've crossed that point where we can only say that and get away with it. Because my client might be sitting here, but they might be actually delivering to customers in UK, for instance, or in any of the other European countries, in which case I would need to know what the GDPR law is in terms of data privacy and confidentiality. So I think because, exactly as Professor said, because we are such a globalized world, we cannot, even as teachers, I think we all accept this, that we cannot just talk about case studies from around us, but we need to bring in every aspect into the classroom so that our students are better prepared. So I think the same goes for project managers as well, right? Any last 30 seconds from the students? Okay, Dr. Haitham?
I would like to thank you for arranging this and for everyone. And I would like to thank the students for attending this. And I hope that it's going to be, or it is valuable thing for you.
Mr. Kamal?
I like the setting, it encourages students to be more vocal, more leaders, more team leaders, more project manager at the end. Believe it or not, you will start as a site engineer for civil or technical engineer, but one day you're going to be a project manager. And one day you're going to be seated same place where we are seated. So please, whenever there are such events, take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Be part of it, not only watch it, be part of it. It's a learning
process. Absolutely. And I think just taking away from the panel discussion and the questions that were asked, it's very important to understand that there is always going to be dilemmas, right? Either you are a programmer, you are a technical writer, or you eventually become a project manager, as Professor has said. And we do hope to see most of you in those roles at some time in the future, or become even owners of companies, technical companies that are developing softwares for other clients. In some role or the other, you're going to have that gap to make that decision. We are going to face ethical dilemmas, whether it's about confidentiality versus transparency, or do I think more about my client or more about the bottom line of my company? It's about looking at the greater good. It's about understanding where we draw that line. And I think that was the key takeaway that for me, I've taken away from this panel discussion. So with that, we come to the end of the 17th ReBitVlogs Majlis. I would definitely like to thank Vidhi once again for bringing all of this together, to our wonderful experts, Professor Kamal, Dr. Haitham, and of course our student speakers. Congratulations on winning and the excellent points that you brought forward. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.